The way to get back into your body and a way to feel again, feel the feels, right? Is to focus on those simple pleasures in life, not that big grand scheme of like. In my practice and in the research that I'm doing, I'm seeing that this idea of what we thought happiness was is just not possible. It's not attainable. Happiness is not a state. It's about increasing the points, the moments of joy.
How do you even describe happiness? Like if you're about to hear one of the most validating, important, and impactful interviews I've ever done on this podcast, period. You are going to feel so seen and understood. You're going to understand why feeling fulfilled and just happy has eluded you. And most importantly, you will be left in action. I cannot wait for you to spend time with the incredible Dr. Judith Joseph. Dr. Judith Joseph, I am so happy you are here. Thank you for coming and spending time with me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. And you know, I want to jump right in. So much of your research and your work is with what I guess society would call highly successful, high functioning people. And on the outside, you could check all the boxes in terms of what society tells us to measure, from the income to the family life, to the cars that they drive, to the titles that they have. And yet you are finding some pretty incredible insights. I recently saw you say something that surprised me. You said that we need to throw our idea of happiness out the window. And I thought, Dr. Judith, what has gotten into? You are like the smiliest, most joyful person. What do you mean throw happiness out the window?
Well, in my practice and in the research that I'm doing, I'm seeing that this idea of what we thought happiness was is just not possible. It's not attainable. People are walking around feeling blah or meh or just feeling numb. And then to give them this like impossible idea of happiness to then go ahead and try to obtain, it's just not right. It's unattainable.
And when you say this impossible idea of happiness, is it the kind of, I don't know, popular culture notion that happiness is about doing more, it's about achieving something, it's about go, and all of us are just freaking exhausted? Is that what you're talking about?
Happiness is not a state. It's about increasing the points, the moments of joy. It's about becoming happier and not being happy. So there are small things you can do every day to increase the points of joy in your life, to add up to being happier. It's not just one moment in time. It's not this picture perfect ideal, because that is impossible to reach. And that's why people feel unsatisfied. That's why they feel like they can't reach it. And so when you shift the way you think about happiness as like, okay, there are points of joy today that I could have or not have, right, versus I need to be happy today. It's such a mind-blowing shift, and it's attainable when you think about it as points of joy.
Okay, so I got to get my mind to be on the same level as Dr. Judith here. So maybe I should ask you this. As a researcher, how do you even describe happiness? Like if you were talking, let's say, to your 7-year-old, right? How would you explain happiness to your daughter?
It's interesting because you don't have to teach children how to play. It just seems as if they naturally know how to play. Just do an experiment. You're going to be a researcher with me. Have a toddler, give them a box. They will find ways to enjoy that box. They may put it in their mouth. They may, toss it in their hands. They may throw it to someone else. They may look at it. They may inspect it. They're using their senses to explore a box, something that most of us just discard.
Yep.
Along what line, at what point do we lose the ability to play? And, after a certain while, seeing children and adults in my practice, I'll have a 50-year-old man sit on my couch, and then I look at him like a 5-year-old. I'm like, at what point did this 5-year-old stop playing? And then you trace back to their childhood, you trace back to their trauma. And at some point, they stopped prioritizing fun, joy, play. They just stopped. And they don't know. So it's my job to figure out, where did they lose that? And I'm seeing this lack of feeling and lack of validation and lack of processing in our society. If we don't know how we feel, how can we identify what to do with this feeling, this emotion? How do we trace back to the thought, to the experience that led to this present state? So because of a lack of feeling and processing, I'm learning that this is leading to a lack of joy, which I have helped my patients to name as Anhedonia.
Oh, wait, okay. Hold on. You just Anhedonia? How do you
say it with me?
Okay.
Anhedonia.
Anhedonia.
Yes.
Did I say it?
Perfect.
What the hell is Anhedonia? See, I'm going to do huh, because I'm already laughing at myself.
An is a lack of, hedon is hedonism or joy, pleasure.
Okay.
So lack of joy, anhedonia.
I've never heard this word. Is this actually a clinical term?
It is. It's a very old medical term, and it's throughout the research, but it's not in the typical vocabulary. I'm trying to change that.
Okay.
I educate my patients that anhedonia is something that we all at some point probably experience, but not in long stretches. And if you ever think back to a time in life where you were really busy, and you weren't really processing what you're going through, maybe you were feeling meh or blah, or people ask, how are you doing? I'm okay, but you really felt like nothing. Mm-hmm. Guess what? That's anhedonia.
So I'm just going to speak on behalf of, I think, the vast majority of people who are listening right now, who basically are going through life feeling a little empty inside. And you've already kind of woven through a number of topics. And when I hear you describe that feeling of, well, I don't really know how I'm feeling. I'm sort of checked out. I'm going through the motions. I feel like, I'm not really connected to anything right now. A lot of people have the experience of going, there's a different way to live. And you're here to say there is?
There is. I think a lot of people don't even recognize what that is. There's something called affect labeling. If you name the way you feel, you're less stressed. I mentioned I treat children, some as young as 4, and adults, some as old as 90. And the interesting thing is that when you're seeing a child in preschool, if you walk into any preschool or kindergarten, you'll see a face chart. You'll see a sign that says, this is happy, this is sad, this is angry, this is hurt. Children are taught the importance of labeling the feeling. Why? Because let's say a child feels hurt. They know, oh, my tummy hurts.
Right.
That means I have to go to the bathroom. If I don't go to the bathroom, I'm going to wet my pants, right?
Right.
You don't want the kid wetting the pants.
Right.
At some point in adulthood, we'd stop training adults to identify and label their feelings. Maybe it's because of the state of society. I have this biopsychosocial theory about anhedonia.
Okay, now, there was a whole lot of words. What was it? Biosocial?
Biopsychosocial.
What does that mean?
In medical school, you learn that all disease models or symptoms have a biopsychosocial component. Bios represents your body, your biology. So, for example, we went through a pandemic. Who knows how the virus affected our brains? Some numbers say that 70% of us got infected. Also, there are genetic risk factors in the bio, right? Some of us have a family history of mental health conditions. Mm-hmm. The food that we eat, there's a lot of growing literature in nutritional psychiatry that the foods are causing inflammation and the environment and so forth. So that's the bio part of the biopsychosocial model.
Yep.
The psychological component, this is interesting because in our society, trauma is not processed, and people have a way of kind of labeling victims as being the blame for the trauma. Mm-hmm. The just world theory that we all kind of harbor in our brain says
What is the just world theory?
Well, good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. So you may read these terrible stories of a woman running through the park and you're like, what was she doing in the park at that night? She shouldn't have been attacked. But in our minds, we think, well, if she did this, if she did that, she should have been okay. But it's just not the case. Bad things happen to good people and they happen to them. It wasn't their fault. But in our society, we label trauma as a blaming thing, a shame thing. So it really deters people from talking about their feelings, talking about their pain.
It's true.
And as a society, we went through a lot of trauma. We had the pandemic. We had all these bad things happen. It's like when I take my daughter to the beach and I say, watch out for the waves, and she runs right into the waves. She gets hit, catches her breath, then she nosedives into the sand. Well, we as a society did not get a chance to catch our breaths. We got hit with a pandemic. Then we had all these terrible, news reports about police brutality. Then we saw uprisings with, political issues. We saw wars. I mean, it was just news after news. We never caught our breath. But as a society, there's no COVID-19 memorial. We don't have a holiday. So there's no way to process that trauma. We're just supposed to push through it. And when you push and you don't feel, that sounds like anhedonia, right? You get numb. And that's been our coping mechanism. That's just the psycho part. I haven't even got into the social part.
Well, let's do the social part. And then I have a bunch of questions about the state of where the average person is, given the last 3 to 4 years that we have collectively experienced. So let's talk about the social part, because you've done 2 of them, of the bio, psycho, and now social.
Now the social, we all identify with this. One minute we were told humans are dangerous, don't touch, don't go to their house, stay alone. And then the next minute we were told, okay, humans are safe, you can, congregate. Then we were told again, don't do that, you're gonna get hurt. Children, if you think about children, because I treat children and adults, if you tell them that they've had trauma and then you tell them they're safe and that it wasn't their fault and that this is the routine, they do better. They have a better outcome than if they think it's all their fault and that they're not safe and that there's no routine, there's no plan. Adults have the same type of thinking, right? Like if you tell us that we're safe, then we're not, then we're safe again, then we're not. It just does something to, it's trauma, and we never got to heal from that. So the isolation, that's the social part. We lost that connectivity. Then how did we connect? Online, right? We used social media. And if you look at the CDC reports, children are online and their mental health has declined. So they really got connected to each other online, and it replaced that meaningful interaction. Children need sensory input. Your brains supposedly develop until you're 25. They lost all of that. So they just cope by being online and excessively using social media. And we're learning now that these studies are showing that this is dangerous for their brains. I don't even know what it's going to show for the adult brain, right? So that's the social part. There were other things. We saw a rise in binge drinking in populations that were typically protected because people were soothing that way. You know, we saw things like, unhealthy sexual habits online developing, consumerism, like we've had more online shopping than ever before. So there's this human condition to soothe in ways that are excess. So we do, we don't feel. And when you don't feel, you feel or blah, right? Anhedonia. And a lot of the research is overlapping with anhedonia. From what we know, when Ribot, who's a French psychologist, first identified anhedonia back in the day, in the 1800s, what he found was a correlation between depression, substance abuse, and schizophrenia. But given the collective trauma and the soothing with excess in a culture that is very capitalistic, where the rich are just getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, people are consuming, the rich are consuming money, power. And, the rest of us are just trying to keep up, right? We're consuming, we have the money, our dollars stretch a lot less far than they used to. So we have this really excessive consumerism culture that is not the proper way to soothe. It's not processing, we're not feeling.
I am so happy that you just went there. And I'm going to tell you why. But before I kind of add in my 2 cents, I want to ask you a question, because you have been working with people in your clinical practice. You've been conducting a tremendous number of clinical trials. And so you see it both in your one-on-one patient interactions from the ages of literally 5 to 90. And then you also see it as you're measuring data points. Is it your opinion as a researcher and as a clinician that there has been a large increase in this feeling of emptiness and this feeling of blah, the anhedonia, that you are seeing in the wake of the last 3 to 4 years of the collective trauma of going through the pandemic and all of the just injustice that played out in the news in terms of police brutality and in the political turmoil, that is a collective trauma that has caused a spike in anhedonia, this lack of joy in people?
Absolutely. I think that people are not processing the trauma. They're just told to go. And if you think about it, the pandemic had such uncertainty financially. A lot of us, especially entrepreneurs, they didn't want to lose their jobs, their businesses, their babies, right? Businesses are their babies. So what do? Well, we gotta keep working. We gotta keep working. Many entrepreneurs are still in fight or flight mode from the pandemic. The same for corporations, right? People didn't know if they were going to keep their jobs. So what do? Work came home. It was supposed to only stay home for a little bit. Work is in the home indefinitely now.
Right.
So like our boundaries are totally skewed. We're working more than ever. Children, the same thing. A lot of them can't catch up because of the delays that happen in the education system. Teachers are doing their best, but children are feeling this pressure to like catch up, right? We all can't catch our breath. The trauma ocean is just hitting us wave after wave. And if we don't sit still, if we don't process the trauma, if we continue using these other things to soothe in excess, we're not going to be able to recover. We have to take the time to feel. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my lab. I have families that depend on me. My own family depends on me, you know. I was working. And then after a while, it was just like, blah. Things that used to excite me didn't excite me anymore. So the way to get back into your body and a way to feel again, feel the feels, right, is to focus on those simple pleasures in life. Not that big grand scheme of like, you know, this idea of happiness. But today, how do we increase the points of joy? Because when we add them all together, overall, you feel happier, right? Happy out the window, picture of happy out the window, happier overall is what we're trying to achieve.
That makes all the sense in the world. And the first thing that I recognize, that I think probably everybody recognizing that was saying, I agree, or thinking in their own mind as you were going through the questions, is the first thing that comes to mind, just being honest, is, but I can't slow down to do those things. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that happened during the pandemic. I feel as though in the last 4 years, I was walking on a treadmill and all of a sudden, I don't know who the hell came by, and all of a sudden, tap, 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 took me from walking at 2.5 miles per hour. And next thing you know, I'm in a valet jog, like, you know, when somebody goes to get your car and they go to jog and to get it. And now I'm in a sprint. And I want to slow down.
Well, you went through a trauma, you know, like your show shut down, then you were on the go, and then a whole bunch of things happened. Like, I don't know your personal life, but if you don't take the time to process all those traumas, then you're just using everything else to soothe. And it's a distraction. It'll never be enough because you're not getting to processing that trauma. You're not feeling the feels. And one simple thing everyone can do, right? Let's pick one thing on here that I can do right now and demonstrate with you. Just even with a cup of water.
Okay.
Usually I like to use glass.
Okay, we're cheap here. We got
we're
plastic.
Pretending.
They don't trust me because they think I'm going to break it. No, I'm just kidding. Do you want glass?
No, it's okay.
We'll get glass.
Imagine it's glass.
We have your glass. Do you want glass? I think you'll feel
Sure,
better.
yes,
She would like glass. Should I have glass?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get glass. So how many people, as we get the glasses, how many people would you say, if you were to just throw out a percentage based on your research, how many people are struggling with anhedonia?
It's hard.
Oh, thank you.
It's hard to say because it's hard to measure it. And when we try to track anhedonia through the populations, it's difficult to measure because anhedonia could be related to schizophrenia, depression, substance use. But I think that when we look at the model of the biopsychosocial, how we're all using these behavioral addictions, I don't like the word addiction, but when we look at these behaviors as being self-soothing, because they're habit-forming behaviors, right? Where it's somehow dependent on the money, dependent on the social media, everything. It's all like an addiction, right? So it's hard to measure, but I would guess that it's a very high number. And I think it's hard to measure because people don't know what it is.
Right.
They don't know the name, but hopefully they'll know what it is and they'll be able to address it.
Well, I think the first step is validating.
Yes.
That absolutely everyone experienced some level of this over the last 3 or 4 years. And there's no way that you could be living in the modern world and not have it impact you and the kind of what it feels like in your body. And I've even noticed that like time off hasn't even refreshed me the way that I thought it would. Like I just literally got back from a vacation with my family and celebrating, grandparents' birthdays, and I don't feel refreshed. I feel even more tired, honestly.
Yep.
And that never used to be the case. And so if you were not looking at the data, but you were saying based on common sense and just the wide range of people that walk in and out of your practice and in your research institute every day, do you think that this is something that's impacting absolutely everybody on some level?
I think so. I think everyone has points, just like the points of joy that are lost throughout
Yep.
the day. Everyone experiences the numbing. We have to remember that numbing, right? Fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
Those are trauma responses. So not only are we just busying ourselves and not feeling, but we're also not feeling as a way to survive this, right?
Right.
If we felt it, then maybe some of us would be terrified with that feeling.
Well, and the other thing is, honestly, I love you, Dr. Judith, but I don't want to fucking feel the thing again. Like, I feel like I went through it. I want it to be over with. I want to move on. And yet there is a deeper level of happiness. And what I love about that I want, and what I love about your research is that you are doing this with people that are moving on, that are high functioning, that do have their jobs, that are paying their bills, that are doing all this and yet can't access it.
Dr. Judith Joseph challenges the traditional notion of happiness as an unattainable ideal, emphasizing that it is about increasing moments of joy in daily life rather than a constant state. She discusses the impact of societal factors on mental well-being, connecting the term anhedonia, a lack of joy or pleasure, to collective trauma experienced, including the pandemic and social isolation. Dr. Joseph explores the biopsychosocial model, highlighting the interconnectedness of biological, psychological, and social factors in mental health. She stresses the importance of processing emotions, identifying and labeling feelings, and creating healthy coping mechanisms to prevent pervasive emptiness and anhedonia, particularly in the face of collective challenges like trauma. Dr. Judith Joseph discusses the impact of anhedonia, a lack of joy or pleasure, particularly among high-functioning individuals like entrepreneurs. The conversation centers on the challenges of slowing down and reconnecting with simple pleasures amid busy lifestyle. Dr. Joseph advocates for shifting focus from the grand idea of happiness to accumulating small moments of joy in daily life, emphasizing their contribution to an overall sense of happiness. The discussion addresses collective trauma, including the pandemic, and its association with widespread struggles with anhedonia. The interview explores the difficulty of measuring anhedonia and the use of behavioral addictions as self-soothing mechanisms. Mel Robbins shares her personal experience of post-vacation exhaustion connected by Joseph to pervasive numbing and trauma responses in society. In summary, the conversation delves into the intricacies of addressing anhedonia, highlighting its widespread impact and underscoring the importance of acknowledging and processing emotions for a deeper sense of happiness and well-being.